My name is Nancy Coleman, 27, an accountant in Chicago. It was my brother's 30th birthday at an Italian restaurant, and his words hit me like a brick. He stood up, glass-raised eyes glinting with something cruel, and said, "You're not my sister, and that apartment isn't yours." The room went silent. Friends stared. His coworker smirked. I felt my face burn not from shame, but from a rage I'd buried for years. I'd been carrying him, paying the rent, the bills, everything while he partied and made excuses. And now in front of everyone, he'd thrown it all in my face. I didn't scream or cry. I just nodded, grabbed my coat, and walked out. The sting of his words followed me to my car, but something snapped inside. I was done. Done being his bank, his doormat, his excuse. That night, I called my best friend. We made a plan, one that would turn his world upside down. By morning, the apartment we shared would be empty except for his junk. I'd take back what was mine and leave him with a truth he couldn't twist. He thought he could humiliate me and walk away. He was wrong. What I did next wasn't just payback. It was a reckoning. And when he came crawling back, whining to our mom, I had proof he couldn't deny. Want to know how I made him face the consequences? Stick around, this story's just getting started. If you love real family drama with jaw-dropping twists, hit subscribe and join me for the full story. Travis and I had been sharing a Chicago apartment for 3 years. I'm an accountant, and I paid 80% of our rent, $2,000 a month, plus electricity, water, and internet. My brother, a salesman, barely scraped by. His commission checks were inconsistent, yet he always had excuses. Work slow, or I'll make it up next month. Next month never came. I'd write checks, transfer money, and track every bill in a spreadsheet while he'd shrug and say, "You're better at this stuff." I wasn't just covering rent. I was carrying his life. 3 years of promises, 3 years of nothing. Our mom, living in a small house in the suburbs, never saw it that way. She'd call him weekly, asking about his job, his plans, his life. Me, I got a quick, "How's work?" if I was lucky. Once she spent 20 minutes praising his hustle while I listened on speaker, my stomach twisting. She'd send him birthday cards with cash, but mine came with a note. "Keep working hard." It wasn't just favoritism. It felt like I was invisible. I told myself it didn't matter, that I was the responsible one, but every call chipped away at me. The breaking point came at his 30th birthday party. The Italian restaurant was upscale with dim lights and clinking glasses. He'd insisted on throwing a big bash, knowing I'd foot most of the bill. I didn't mind at first. It was his milestone, and I wanted him to feel special. I reserved the private room, paid the deposit, even bought a cake. Friends filled the table, laughing, toasting. He drank too much, his voice louder with each glass of wine. Then, out of nowhere, he stood up, swayed, and pointed at me. His words were sharp, deliberate. "You're not my sister, and that apartment isn't yours." Laughter stopped. Eyes turned to me. His friends exchanged glances, some smirking, others frozen. I sat there, my fork still in hand, feeling like I'd been slapped. I'd spent years rationalizing his behavior. He was my brother, after all. Growing up, we'd been close, sharing secrets, sneaking snacks past bedtime. But somewhere along the way, he'd changed. Or maybe I'd just been blind. When we moved in together, I thought it'd be temporary. I'd help him get back on his feet after a bad breakup and a worse job market. But 3 years later, I was still paying for everything. He'd buy new sneakers, go out with friends, post selfies from bars while I covered the rent alone. I'd ask for his share and he'd grin, promising, "I'll get you next time." I kept track every dollar, every excuse. My spreadsheet showed he owed me $20,000, a number that grew with every missed payment. Mom's calls made it worse. Last month, she told me to be patient with him, that he was trying his best. Trying. He hadn't paid a utility bill in 2 years. I'd bite my tongue, nod through her lectures, but her words stung. She'd always seen him as the golden child, the one with big dreams, while I was just the steady one expected to hold it all together. I never complained, never pushed back. I thought that's what family did, support each other no matter what. But that night, sitting at the table, his words echoing in my head, I realized I wasn't supporting him. I was enabling him. The hurt wasn't just from what he said, it was the truth behind it. He didn't see me as his sister, not in the way that mattered. To him, I was a safety net, someone to lean on without giving back. The apartment, the bills, the years of sacrifices, they weren't ours, they were mine. And he'd thrown it in my face in front of everyone like it was a joke. I stared at my plate, the cake untouched, and felt something shift. All the years of swallowing my frustration, of hoping he'd change, of believing family came first, they crashed down. I wasn't just hurt, I was done pretending. The inequality, the excuses, the weight of carrying him, it had to end. I didn't know how yet, but I knew I couldn't let this go. That night, I sat in my car outside the restaurant, my hands gripping the wheel. The sting of my brother's words burned, but I wasn't crying. I was done with that. I pulled out my phone and called Lance, my best friend from college. He picked up on the second ring, his voice steady, grounding me. I spilled everything: how Travis stood up drunk and told everyone I wasn't his sister, how he claimed the apartment I paid for wasn't mine. My voice shook, not from sadness but from a fire I hadn't felt in years. Lance listened, not interrupting, until I finished. "You've been carrying him too long," Lance said, his tone sharp. "He's using you, and that stunt tonight proves it. You need to cut him off." I nodded, though he couldn't see me. He was right. For 3 years, I'd paid nearly all our rent, $2,000 a month, while Travis tossed out empty promises. Lance didn't stop there. "Take back what's yours," he said. "The stuff you bought the money he owes, make him face reality." It wasn't just advice. It was a wake-up call. I'd let Travis lean on me, but no more. We started planning. I listed everything I'd bought for the apartment: a 55-inch TV, a leather sofa, a dishwasher I'd saved up for. Those were mine, not his. Then there was the money, $20,000 he owed me. Rent, utilities, even personal loans when he needed a little help. I'd kept every receipt, every text where he swore he'd pay me back. Next month, he'd say, or, "once I close this deal." He never did. My spreadsheet tracked it all. Dates, amounts, his excuses. It was my ammunition. Lance and I mapped out the next steps. "Tomorrow morning," he said, "I'll bring a moving van. We'll take your stuff, transfer the lease, and put the bills in his name." I hesitated for a second. This was big, moving out, leaving him to fend for himself. But then I remembered his smirk, the way he'd humiliated me in front of his friends. No, this wasn't just about getting even. It was about taking back my life. I told Lance I was in. He promised to be there at 8 sharp with a rented van and a couple of guys to help. The lease was the next hurdle. I'd signed it originally, but Travis was on it too. I'd call the landlord first thing in the morning, explain I was moving out, and transfer the full responsibility to him. The utilities, electricity, water, internet, were in my name. I'd switch those too. Let him deal with the bills for once. Lance suggested leaving a note, something short to make it clear this wasn't a game. I like that. A simple message to hit him where it hurt, to show he couldn't walk over me anymore. I opened my phone and scrolled through my evidence. Texts from Travis, months old. "I'll get you the rent next week, promise." Another from last year. "Thanks for covering me, sis, you're the best." I almost laughed at that one. The best. To him, I was a free ride. I had screenshots of bank transfers, utility bills, even a loan he'd begged for to fix his car. $20,000, all documented. I saved everything to a cloud folder just in case he tried to twist the story later. Lance agreed it was smart. "He's not getting out of this," he said. As we talked, my anger turned into resolve. I wasn't just taking my stuff. I was reclaiming my boundaries. Travis had taken advantage of me for years, banking on my silence, my loyalty. But loyalty doesn't mean letting someone walk all over you. Lance's voice crackled through the phone, pulling me back. "You sure about this?" he asked. I didn't hesitate. Absolutely. This wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. I'd given him chance after chance, and he'd thrown it back in my face. Now he'd see what it felt like to stand on his own. By the time we hung up, it was past midnight. I drove to a hotel, my mind racing with the plan. Tomorrow we'd strip the apartment of everything I'd paid for. Travis would come home to nothing but his own mess. The lease, the bills, the reality it would all be his. I felt a weight lift, not completely, but enough to breathe. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about what he needed. I was thinking about me. The next morning, Lance pulled up with a rented moving van. The sun was barely up, but I was wired running on coffee and determination. My best friend hopped out, flanked by two guys he'd roped in to help. I didn't waste time with small talk. We walked into the apartment I'd shared with my brother for 3 years now, just a stage for what came next. I pointed out everything I'd bought: the 55-inch TV mounted on the wall, the leather sofa I'd saved up for the dishwasher I'd installed when we moved in. Travis's stuff, his rickety table and mismatched chairs, stayed behind. This wasn't his home anymore. It was his wake-up call. We started with the TV. Lance unhooked it while I packed the cables, my hand steady, but my heart racing. The sofa was heavier, but the four of us managed maneuvering it through the narrow doorway. The dishwasher took longer, unbolting it, disconnecting the water line, but I wasn't leaving a single thing I'd paid for. Every item we loaded into the van felt like peeling back a layer of Travis's lies. He'd lived off me never contributing, and I was done. By 9, the apartment looked gutted, his old furniture sitting alone like a bad joke. I called the landlord next. He was a gruff guy used to my timely payments. "I'm moving out," I told him. "Travis is taking over the lease." He didn't ask questions, just sent me the paperwork to sign. I filled it out on my phone, transferring the full responsibility to my brother. Then I tackled the utilities: electricity, water, internet. I spent an hour on hold with each company, switching every account to his name. It was tedious, but satisfying. For the first time, he'd have to deal with the bills himself. I double-checked each confirmation email, saving them in a folder labeled Travis's Problem. On the kitchen table, I left a note. I wrote it in black ink, my handwriting sharp. "This apartment isn't your free ride." It wasn't just a message. It was the line I was drawing. Lance read it, nodded, and said, "That'll hit him hard." I hoped so. Travis needed to feel the weight of his choices the way I'd felt his words at the party. I didn't linger on the note, though. I had one more step to lock this down. I pulled out my phone and opened my cloud folder. Every receipt, every text, every bank transfer was there, proof of the $20,000 he owed me. Rent payments, utility bills, even the cash I'd lent him for emergencies that turned out to be bar tabs. I photographed the empty apartment, the note on the table, the confirmation emails from the landlord and utility companies. If Travis tried to spin this, I'd be ready. I wasn't just protecting myself. I was building a case he couldn't dodge. Lance watched me, his expression serious. "You're not messing around," he said. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. As we loaded the last box into the van, I stood in the doorway looking at the bare apartment. The walls seemed emptier than I'd expected, the silence heavier. I felt a rush of relief, like I'd shed a weight I'd carried too long. But there was a knot of anxiety, too. What if Travis lashed out? What if he dragged our mom into this? I pushed the thoughts down. I'd spent years worrying about his reactions, his excuses. Not anymore. I locked the door behind me, the click final, like closing a chapter. Lance drove the van to a storage unit I'd rented nearby. We unloaded everything: TV, sofa, dishwasher, stacking them neatly inside. I'd figure out what to do with them later. For now, they were safe out of Travis's reach. As we finished, Lance clapped me on the shoulder. "You did the right thing," he said. I nodded, but the mix of emotions churned inside me. Relief, yes, but also a flicker of fear. Fear of the fallout of what Travis would say or do when he saw the apartment. Still, I wasn't turning back. I'd given him too many chances and he'd burned them all. Driving away, I felt lighter but not free. Not yet. The apartment was his now, along with the rent, the bills, and the truth. I didn't know how he'd react, but I was ready for it. My phone buzzed as we pulled onto the highway and I ignored it. Whatever Travis had to say could wait. I'd made my move, and for the first time in years, I was the one in control. By noon, my phone lit up with Travis's texts. The first one was a single word: seriously. Then a barrage followed, each one angrier than the last. "You're so selfish," he wrote. "This is low even for you, leaving me with nothing. You're irresponsible." I stared at the screen, my jaw tight. Irresponsible. I'd paid his way for 3 years, and now I was the villain. His words didn't hurt. They just fueled the fire. I didn't reply. Let him stew. Then came the Instagram Reels video. My brother posted it an hour later and a friend sent me the link. I watched my stomach twisting. Travis stood in our gutted apartment, panning the camera across the empty living room, his old table and chairs looking pathetic in the center. "This is what my sister did," he said, his voice thick with self-pity. "She took everything, TV, sofa, dishwasher, and left me like this. I'm struggling and she just bailed." He zoomed in on the note I'd left. "This apartment isn't your free ride." His caption read, "Families supposed to stick together, right? Guess not." The video had already racked up views and the comments were a mess, some pitying him, others calling me heartless. Our mutual friends blew up the group chat. I'd muted it, but notifications kept coming. One friend messaged me privately. "Did you really do this? What happened?" Another was blunt. "Travis is acting like a victim, but this feels off." I didn't respond yet. I wasn't ready to explain myself to people who'd only heard his side. Travis had always been good at playing the underdog, charming his way out of accountability. Not this time. I had proof, and I'd use it when the moment was right. Lance jumped into the group chat, and I could have hugged him for it. "Hold up," he wrote. "Travis, where's the $20,000 you owe Nancy for rent and bills? You don't get to play victim when you've been freeloading." The chat went quiet for a bit, then exploded again. Some friends backed Lance, asking Travis to explain. Others stayed neutral, waiting for more context. Travis fired back, dodging the question. "This isn't about money. It's about family betraying you." I rolled my eyes. He was deflecting as always, but Lance's pushback had planted a seed. People were starting to question his story. The Instagram Reels comments were worse. Strangers piled on "your sister's cold-blooded," or "how do you even recover from this?" But others weren't buying it. "Why's the apartment in her name?" "If you're so independent," one comment read. Another, "sounds like there's more to this story." The split was almost even, half sympathizing with Travis, half suspicious. I scrolled through, my finger hovering over the reply button. Every part of me wanted to fire back, to post the receipts, the texts, the bank transfers. I'd saved everything, 3 years of payments, his empty promises, the $20,000 he'd never repaid. But I held off. Dropping it all now would be too soon. I wanted him to dig his hole deeper. Lance called me that afternoon. "He's spiraling," he said, almost laughing. "Keeps texting the group saying you've ruined his life. You good?" I was, mostly. Seeing Travis's tantrum unfold felt validating, but it also stirred unease. He wasn't just mad, he was trying to turn everyone against me. I told Lance I was sticking to the plan. Stay quiet, let him talk, then hit back with the truth. "Smart," he said. "He's got no leg to stand on once you show what he's done." I hung up, feeling a strange calm. Travis's outburst was loud, but it was hollow. He couldn't erase the numbers in my spreadsheet. I spent the evening at the hotel, my laptop open, reviewing my evidence. Screenshots of his texts. "I'll pay you back next month, swear." Bank statements showing my payments for rent, utilities, even his car repair. Emails from the landlord and utility companies confirming the accounts were now in his name. I organized it all ready to share when the time came. Travis's video was still gaining traction, but I wasn't worried. His narrative was crumbling and I hadn't even spoken yet. The group chat buzzed with more questions, some directed at me, but I stayed silent. Let them wonder. Let Travis sweat. This wasn't about revenge, it was about setting the record straight. Travis had spent years dodging responsibility and now he was facing the consequences. I wasn't the selfish one. I wasn't the one who'd betrayed family. As his texts kept coming, each one more desperate, I felt steadier. He could scream into the void all he wanted. I had the truth, and soon everyone else would too. 2 days later, Mom called me from her house in the suburbs. I was at the hotel staring at my laptop when her name flashed on my phone. I braced myself. Nancy, she said, her voice tight. How could you do this to Travis? He's struggling to survive and you just abandon him. My chest tightened. Janet's words weren't new. She'd always taken his side. But hearing them now, after everything, cut deeper. She went on about how Travis was trying so hard to make ends meet, how I'd left him with nothing. Not once did she ask about me, my reasons, or the years I'd carried him. It was like I didn't exist. I didn't argue. I'd learned long ago that Janet's favoritism was unshakable. Instead, I said, "Mom, I did what I had to." She sighed, disappointed, and hung up after telling me to think about family. Family, I'd thought about family every time I paid his rent, every time I let his excuses slide. I sat there, the silence of the hotel room pressing in, feeling a loneliness I hadn't expected. My own mother couldn't see my side, and that hurt more than Travis's words ever had. But I wasn't backing down. I opened my laptop and sent my evidence to Lance. The folder was airtight screenshots of bank transfers for rent and utilities texts from my brother promising to pay me back soon, receipts for the TV, sofa, and dishwasher. $20,000 worth of proof that Travis had leaned on me without giving anything back. I included his recent messages where he called me selfish and the utility confirmations now in his name. Lance texted back instantly, "This is gold. Want me to share it?" I gave him the green light. It was time to let the truth speak. Lance posted in our group chat that evening. He didn't hold back, sharing key screenshots, Travis's texts promising payment, my bank statements showing 3 years of rent, even a photo of him flaunting new sneakers on Instagram while I covered his bills. "This is who's struggling," Lance wrote. "Travis owes Nancy 20 grand and never paid a dime of rent." He added a screenshot of Travis's reel, pointing out how he'd conveniently left out his freeloading. The chat lit up. Friends who'd been silent started asking questions. "Is this true?" One wrote. "Travis, you didn't mention this?" Said another. A few suggested I talk to him, try to work it out. I shook my head. Work it out. He'd had years to do that. The shift in the group chat was slow but noticeable. Some friends who'd bought Travis's sob story started backing off their messages, more cautious. One sent me a private text. "I had no idea he owed you that much. Why didn't you say something?" I didn't reply. Explaining myself to everyone wasn't the goal, showing the truth was. Travis tried to defend himself in the chat, claiming I'd exaggerated the debt that he'd helped in other ways. Lance shut him down with another screenshot, Travis's text from last year begging me for a loan to fix his car, which he spent on a weekend trip. The chat went quiet after that. Janet's call kept replaying in my mind. Her voice, so quick to defend Travis, so blind to my sacrifices, left a hollow ache. I'd always known she favored him, but this was different. She hadn't even asked why I'd moved out, why I'd taken my things. It was like my side of the story didn't matter. I felt alone, cut off from the family I'd tried so hard to hold together. But that loneliness hardened my resolve. I wasn't wrong for standing up for myself. Travis had taken enough, and Janet's bias wasn't my burden to carry. I checked the group chat again before bed. A few friends had messaged me privately saying they understood why I'd done it. Others were still on the fence, urging me to talk to Travis. I ignored those. Talking hadn't worked in 3 years. Why would it now? Lance called to check in. You okay? He asked. I admitted Mom's call had shaken me, but I was holding firm. You're doing the right thing, he said. They're starting to see him for who he is. I nodded, staring at my laptop screen, the evidence folder still open. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for the truth. Travis and Janet could cling to their version of reality, but I had the facts, and I wasn't letting go. A week after the party, Travis texted me from a new number. We need to talk, he wrote. I agreed to meet at a quiet Chicago cafe, my folder of evidence tucked under my arm. The air was crisp, the city buzzing, but I felt steady. I'd prepared for this. When I arrived, Travis was already there, slouched in a corner booth, looking tired. I slid into the seat across from him, the paper outlining his $20,000 debt between us. This wasn't about reconciliation, it was about closing the book. Travis started with an apology, but it was weak. I'm sorry about the party, he mumbled, eyes on his coffee. Work's been rough, and I had too much to drink. I didn't flinch. His excuses were as old as the debt he owed me. I pushed the paper toward him, detailing every payment I'd made. Rent, utilities, loans he'd never repaid. This is what you owe me, I said. $20,000. His face paled as I laid out the evident screenshots of his texts, promising to pay bank statements showing my transfers receipts for everything I'd bought for our apartment. He tried to interrupt, blaming stress, but I cut him off. Sign it, I said, handing him a pen. The paper promised he'd pay $50 a month until the debt was cleared. He hesitated, then scribbled his name, his jaw tight. I leaned back, feeling a weight lift. Then I dropped the bombshell. I sold Dad's watch, I said. The one he left us. Got $500 for it. Travis's eyes widened, shock replacing his defensiveness. You sold it, he stammered. I nodded. I'm going to Hawaii. A real vacation on my terms. The watch, an old heirloom, had been a sore point for us. Travis always thought it was his. Selling it was my final act of reclaiming my life. He didn't argue, just sat there stunned as I stood up. We're done here, I said, leaving him with the signed paper and his coffee. Walking out of the cafe, I felt free. The city's noise faded, replaced by a quiet certainty. Travis no longer had a hold on me. His words, his debts, his excuses. They were his burden now. I didn't look back. For the first time in years, I wasn't carrying someone else's weight. A few days later, I moved into my new apartment near work. It was small, but mine, with big windows letting in soft light. I decorated it slowly, string lights along the walls, a sturdy bookshelf filled with novels, a few potted plants adding green to the space. Every choice was mine, from the soft rug underfoot to the coffee table I'd picked out. It felt like a fresh start, a space where Travis's chaos couldn't reach me. At work, I grew closer to Ellen Porter, a colleague in finance. We started grabbing lunch together, splitting the bill down the middle every time. Ellen was sharp, funny, and meticulous about fairness, a stark contrast to my brother. Over burgers one day, she asked about my move, and I shared bits of the story, not the full drama, just enough. You did the right thing, she said, her tone matter of fact. Our friendship grew, built on small moments, coffee runs, shared playlists, and plans for a weekend hike. For the first time, I had a connection that didn't demand I give more than I got. Meanwhile, Travis unraveled. Lance told me he couldn't keep up with the rent on the old apartment. By the end of the month, he'd moved back in with Janet, our mom, in the suburbs. His sales job, always shaky, wasn't enough to cover his debts or his lifestyle. Friends in the group chat stopped defending him, their silence louder than their earlier questions. Janet, too, faced her own reckoning. Her favoritism hadn't saved Travis from his choices. She called me once asking me to fix things, but I didn't answer. I was done fixing their messes. I blocked Travis's number after the cafe meeting. No more texts, no more excuses. Cutting him off wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I didn't hate him, I just refused to let his selfishness define my life. My focus shifted to my own path: work, Ellen, the trip to Hawaii I'd planned. I was building something new, something mine. This journey taught me hard lessons. Family isn't a blank check. You have to set boundaries, even with the people closest to you. Travis's selfishness cost him his independence, his credibility, and our relationship. Janet's blind support enabled him leaving her to deal with the fallout. For me, financial independence became my strength, a shield against being used again. I'm grateful to those who followed this story, who've seen the messy truth of it. What do you think? Have you ever had to draw a line with family? Share your thoughts below. And if you found value in this, please subscribe to the channel for more. Thank you for listening.